Over 951 cubic feet of granite make up the 11 pieces of the monument. The overall height is 19 feet 3 inches from the surface of the ground to the top of the capstone.
Thank you. Congratulations.
There are slots and holes in the center stone that have astrological significance because they have been cut at precise angles to permit accurate readings of the sun and moon at various times of the year.
Standing on the highest point of Elbert County, the Georgia Guidestones have raised a lot of questions. 4 upright stones more than 16 feet high, with support stones totaling almost 238,000 pounds. And there's a message sandblasted in 12 languages in letters 2 inches tall. The sponsors of the mysterious project are said to be an anonymous group of out-of-state Americans promoting the concept of the conservation of mankind. Here's the mystery, though. Elberton granite businessman Joe Findley was contacted to build the project by a man using the fictitious name of R.C. Christian. Granite City Bank President Wyatt Martin served as intermediary, handled the escrow account for all funds, and says he'll carry the secret of who R.C. Christian is to his grave. Well, in spite of what we don't know, Congressman Doug Bernard dedicated the Guidestones with an open mind.
We must stress today the need for self-control, for self-restraint, and yes, self-government, all of which I interpret in this Georgia Guidestone.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Now, if you're seeing me for the first time, then hey man, how's it going? I'm glad you're here. And if you happen to be here for my TikTok, well then, I'm sorry. The biggest reason I wanted to start a YouTube channel is mostly because I want to be able to talk about different conspiracies and oddities and true crime events and, you know, spooks and goofs without having to break down my content into a minute or two long digestible pieces, and unlike some platforms I know. TikTok is what I'm talking about. And I figure YouTube would be the best way for me to deliver that kind of content to you guys. I figured what better way than to start with something that's personal and also hits very close to home. I mean, literally, it's like 2 hours away from me, so pretty personal. This is the story of the Georgia Guidestones, otherwise known as the American Stonehenge. Before I get into it, I want to address the fact that the Guidestones received a lot of controversy in the 42 years they were open to the public, mostly ranging from Luciferianism and the New World Order to Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry. So you know, the classics. I want to just stick to the objective history and facts about the Guidestones and save the conspiracies and opinions for the end. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Georgia Guidestones was a granite monument that stood in Elbert County, Georgia. It was open to the public from 1980 to 2022. It consisted of 6 granite slabs and stood approximately 19 feet and 3 inches tall and weighed about 238,000 pounds. Creation was proposed in June 1979 to the Elberton Granite Finishing Company by an anonymous man using an alias Robert C. Christian, or R.C. Christian. He claimed to be from a group of loyal Americans who had been planning the stone's construction for 20 years. Christian explained to Joe Findley, the then president of Granite Finishing, that he was inspired by the Neolithic monument Stonehenge, but that they lacked a message, and that his stones would not only contain a message, but would function as a guide, compass, calendar, and clock. Christian purposely chose Elberton as a location, claiming that they had the finest granite in all the world. So upon hearing all this, Findley thought that, like most people, that Christian was a nut, and he devised a little plan. He was going to suggest a price that was so ridiculously high that it would exceed anything the company had ever done before, and that there is no way Christian would ever accept it. Imagine if I showed up one day and offered to buy from you your favorite Squishmallow. This guy's name is, I don't know his name. We'll call him Kelly. Now, you don't know who I am, and obviously you don't want to part with your favorite Squishmallow, so you say, oh, yeah, I'll give it to you. For $1 million. Then I give you $1 million on the spot. Now, the total cost of the project was never really revealed, but it's estimated that it cost well over $100,000 at the time. And adjusted for inflation, it would have cost a little over $374,000. After Findley had got done explaining how much it would cost, Christian just sat there eagerly, like, that sounds great. And after that, Finley thought to himself that, well, this guy is crazy, but he's obviously very rich. And he directed him to the Elberton City Bank president, Wyatt Martin. Now, keep in mind, Wyatt Martin was the only other man to ever see Christian face to face besides Joe Finley. And when he had first met Christian, he thought, like Finley, that he was kind of crazy, but he started to take him seriously when he actually explained what he was trying to do. Now, eventually, Martin and Christian negotiated a deal that Christian would reveal his real name on the condition that Martin act as his sole intermediary and that he sign a non-disclosure agreement to never reveal any of the details about the project to any other living soul for as long as he lived, and that he destroy all of the documents after the project was finished. According to Martin, Christian was so dedicated to his secrecy that even after accepting Martin as his intermediary, he would send money to him from several different banks, and they were never at the same location twice. It would be from various ones that he would hop around across the country. So, yeah, the guy was pretty dedicated, to say the least. Upon his second meeting with Martin, Christian delivered to him a scale model of what the Guidestones were supposed to look like and 10 pages of specifications. Now, what exactly the specifications said, nobody really knows because Martin kept them in a box, unopened, in his garage for several years. They also finalized the purchase of a 5-acre plot of land from local farmer Wayne Mullinex for $5,000 and the agreement that Mullinex and his children would have cattle grazing rights at the monument site. And with all the purchases made, the monument had its final location decided, 7 miles north of the city of Elberton at the city's highest point. And with all of the business dealings done and the project being overseen by Wayne Martin, Christian made his final goodbyes to Joe Finley. He showed up at the Granite office, shook his hand, and said, "You'll never see me again." He then turned and walked out the door. Now, before the project was ever even fully finished, Joe Finley thought that, hey, this monument is going to shine a big spotlight on the city, and oh boy, howdy did it. And at long last, on March 22nd, 1980, the monument was unveiled in front of a crowd of around 400 people by Congressman Doug Bernard, where this message was read. In order to avoid debate, we, the sponsors of the Georgia Guidestones, have a simple message for human beings, now and for the future. We believe our precepts are sound and they must stand on their own merits. Now, 6 years later in 1986, someone claiming to be Christian wrote a book called Common Sense Renewed, in which he elaborated further on what the Guidestones were supposed to mean. I am the originator of the Georgia Guidestones and the sole author of its inscriptions. I have had the assistance of a number of other American citizens in bringing the monument into being. We have no mysterious purposes or ulterior motives. We seek common sense pathways to a peaceful world without bias for particular creeds or philosophies. And as predicted, from the moment they were unveiled, controversy ensued. For starters, a local minister insisted that pagan groups and occult groups would use the monument site for sacrifices and, blood drinking and pagan rituals that would summon demons and, things of that nature, things you would typically hear from, your local minister. And what's funny enough is that, supposedly a coven of witches from Atlanta made the monument their new home away from home and would frequently go there to do Wiccan or pagan rituals. And supposedly there was even a pagan wedding that took place there, which, if that's true, then actually that's kind of cool, actually. I wish I could have been there for that. And I've met several Wiccans in my life, and, yes, some may consider their customs strange, but a lot of what they do is very interesting, and they're all nice people, and they just don't seem like the type that would cut my heart out and eat it under the moonlight while, worshiping the devil. Doesn't really seem their vibe. One of the more interesting stories to me was Charlie Clamp, who was one of the sandblasters that worked on the Guidestones, claimed to hear disjointed voices and strange music the entire time he was working on them, which that can either be chalked up to a supernatural occurrence or he just heard Georgia bluegrass playing outside of his workshop. The Guidestones themselves were even vandalized on multiple occasions in 2008, 2014, with phrases like "Death to the New World Order" and "You will not succeed" written in paint on the sides of it. But with all this opposition, there was also some vocal support for the Guidestones. Like with one person saying, they are a stirring call to rational thinking. You gonna guess who said that? Yoko Ono. Random, right? Of all people. And yes, it's the one you're thinking of, the Beatles one. I just thought that was interesting. I just wanted to point that out. However, all of this controversy kind of paled in comparison to the renewed vigor of 2022 Georgia gubernatorial candidate Candace Taylor, in which she called the Guidestones satanic and called for their destructions and made defeating the Luciferian cabal a part of her political platform. Now, this is up for debate, but some people believe that this is what led to the event that occurred on July 6th of this year, 2022, in which a explosive device was detonated at the Guidestone site, destroying the Hindi and Swahili language slabs. Despite the efforts of Elbert County Sheriff's Department and the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, as of today, no suspect has been identified and no motive has been noted. However, there is some good news. In late July of this year, Elberton Mayor Daniel Graves had this to say: "We're just getting geared up and excited about rebuilding the monument. It's going to happen. It may take us 6 months to a year to do it, but we are going to do it." Yeah, that didn't happen. On August 8th, 2022, the Elberton County City Council voted to return the land to the previous owner, the Mullinex family, and said that it is unlikely, but not impossible, that the monuments will be rebuilt. And you may be wondering, after all this mystique, after all this controversy, what the hell do the Guidestones even say? And to that I say, don't interrupt me, I'm getting to that. The Georgia Guidestones, written in 8 different languages, read as follows. I'll be reading them in English since I assume that's your preferred language. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition in all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. And the square stone that rested at the top of the Guidestones also said this: "Let these be a guidestones to an age of reason." And they were written in Sanskrit, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Babylonian cuneiform, and classical Greek on all 4 corners. As mentioned previously, the Guidestones also had astronomical features, including a hole that was cut at an angle in order to track the North Star, and another vertical slot, often referred to as the male slot, that was cut to track the sun's solstices and equinoxes. It was actually pretty cool. I went there one time to see it like that. If you couldn't tell, I've been to the Guidestones before. And one feature I didn't notice that it was there, but I figured it out when I read up on it, was apparently there is a 7/8 inch aperture that's cut on the stones in a way that at noon every day, when the sun shines through it, it indicates the day of the year. So a calendar, which is actually really cool. I don't know how I missed that. And the final feature of the Guidestones is a explanation tablet that's placed nearby, and it basically explains everything I already told you. However, there was one weird thing, is that supposedly there was originally going to be a time capsule buried underneath the Guidestones that was to be opened on a insert year here that was never carved in there. But after the Guidestones were destroyed, officials dug 6 feet below the Guidestones and they found nothing. So I'm assuming that was just a scrapped idea that was kind of left there. And finally, we get to the best part of the video, and that's where we discuss the conspiracies. And the first one up to bat would be the Guidestones are the 10 Commandments of the Antichrist. They were formed when Christians noted the similarities between the 10 Commandments and the Guidestones, i.e. the 10 Commandments on the Guidestones and the 10 Commandments in the Bible. And they also noted the biblical references from the book of Revelations. They thought that the one world government reference on the Guidestones was referencing the one world government in one language that was in the book of Revelations, as well as the general slap in the face to traditional Christianity that the Guidestones had as they kind of align more with universalism. And if the Guidestones are a 10 Commandments of the Antichrist, well then, I don't know why they put it in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, because they probably could have done it in a much more epic and cooler way. Like, if I were the Antichrist, I would be more flashy, but that's just me. Next one is, I already kind of mentioned earlier, but it's the classic, the always lovable New World Order. And this one is pretty straightforward and kind of self-explanatory. They note the reference to a one world government and a living new language and the population control as mini templates of a new world order. And this one is kind of a broad conspiracy, as you can tie in Luciferianism and the Ten Commandments of the Antichrist and the New World Order. You can kind of call them together. The New World Order is kind of like a hodgepodge of just whatever evil bad guy agenda you want to put on it, honestly. So this one is I don't put too much merit in this one. This is my personal opinion. The next theory is Ted Turner made the Guidestones. Now, this is one of the more believable ones, mostly because at the time, in the 70s, Ted Turner had a very apocalyptic kick and would be the most likely candidate to have made the Guidestones. Most people draw references to the CNN nuclear apocalypse airing that was leaked, that was never supposed to be seen by anybody unless the war was ending. And also, a lot of Ted Turner's beliefs kind of tie into the Guidestones. There's no definitive proof, but if you were to make a jab at guessing whoever made the Guidestones, I guess Ted Turner would be the most likely candidate. Last conspiracy I'm going to address is the... What is it, Najee? All right, buddy? Now, last conspiracy I'm going to address is one that I think is probably the most interesting one, and that is the Georgia Guidestones were made by the Rosicrucians, or Order of the Rose Cross. Now, if you don't know what Rosicrucianism is, it was a early 17th century philosophy that took inspiration from Jewish and Christian mysticism and Hermeticism. Frankly, I can do videos about all of these just on their own, but I digress. This theory kind of became prevalent due to the fact that the possible founder, possibly allegorical founder of Rosicrucianism, is named Christian Rosicruce, or R.C. Christian, or Frater CRC, however you want to say it. But people think that R.C. Christian or Robert Christian was just using that alias specifically because he was a Rosicrucianist, or at the very least believed in Rosicrucianist values, and that was like his calling card, essentially. Now, people also tie Rosicrucianism into the Illuminati. People sometimes kind of interlink them or intertwine them. And also, as I mentioned earlier, Freemasonry. And the biggest reason that Freemasons are involved in Rosicrucianism is that in the 18th degree of the Scottish Rite, the degree is named Order of the Rose Cross, or the Rose Cross degree, and takes inspiration from Rosicrucian philosophy. Now, the reason I want to clarify this is that people often make this mistake, but they refer to like, oh, my grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason, and he knows the real secret that they're all devil worshippers. But people forget that Freemasonry and Scottish Rite are not the same thing. See, Scottish Rite has an additional 30 degrees outside of the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, but Freemasonry is just Freemasonry on its own. It only consists of the first 3 degrees, which is the Entered Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master Mason. The best metaphor I can think for this is that Pepsi, right? You have Pepsi, the soda, but you also have Pepsi Company that owns several different types of soda, such as Sierra Mist, Mountain Dew, but those sodas aren't Freemasonry. They're not Pepsi. They're basically offshoots. They are appended. They are adjacent. They are Pepsi adjacent, but they themselves are not Pepsi. However, they do have ties and take inspiration from each other. I just like to clarify that because a lot of people get that wrong, and it's kind of cringy to see people just spout off saying, well, my great granddad was a 48th degree York Rite Mason, and clearly that's a good sign that the person doesn't know what they're talking about. So keep in mind that Freemasonry has several appendant bodies, York Rite, Scottish Rite, Shriners, but they're their own thing and have their own degrees and their own works and their own rules. So there you go. Hope I help people out. I might make more videos in the future about Masonic things, or maybe talking about Rosicrucianism or Gnosticism, but they'll have to wait. I'll have to see what you guys really want. I'm here for you, honestly. So do I think any of these conspiracies are true? I don't know. You tell me. One detail that I purposely left out earlier was the relationship between Martin and Christian. And Martin actually met Christian several times after the monuments were finished and became pen pals with them, and honestly, they were kind of friends to some extent. And upon hearing Martin speak so highly of Christian's character and hearing this interview and how he talked about the Guidestones, it kind of brought me to a new conclusion, another perspective of the whole situation. And I'd like to read a part of it for you guys. Now, unfortunately, Wayne Martin passed away in 2021, but fortunately for us, he did a few interviews, and one of which is the Wired magazine. Upon hearing the theories that I just laid out to you, Martin winced and said, "It's the sort of thing that makes me want to tell people everything I know, but I can't tell. I made a promise." For years, Martin thought he might write a book about what he knows, but now he knows he probably won't do it. When I ask whether he's prepared to take what he knows to his grave, Martin replies that Christian would want him to do just that. All along, he said that who he was and where he came from had to be kept a secret. He said mysteries work that way. If you want to keep people interested, you can let them know only so much. The rest is enshrouded in the vast sunny stillness. Honestly, Wayne Martin kind of sums it up pretty good. Because before going into this and doing this research, I really only knew the stories. I only knew the mystery. I only knew the intrigue. And I think that's what Christian wanted the whole time. See, the Guidestones, they're not about the stones. The stones are just slabs of rock with like inscriptions on them, but it's about the story. It's about the mystery. See, whoever R.C. Christian was, whether he was Ted Turner or the Pope or Nicolas Cage, he knew what he was doing. He knew shining a light on this small, nobody town that no one could even point to on the map would bring an extra attention and excitement. He understood the purpose of a mystery. And that's kind of why I love making videos like this. Like, I love talking about stories, about conspiracies, about urban legends, because it makes life a little bit more exciting. It's about passing on the story, even when no one cares about them anymore. With the Guidestones being destroyed, this is a story that's going to fade with time, and I really don't want that. And I'm sure the people of Elberton don't want that either. See, stories like this bring people together, I think, in a way that people don't really realize. And I think it's everyone's duty to try and spread these stories, to try to make those memories. And yeah, honestly, that's about all I can say. So, thank you everyone for sticking around and hearing me talk, if you're still around. I hope to make more videos like this in the future. Feel free to, share, like, or just give me critiques, because this is my first video, man. Like, I probably are going to mess up in a few places. Seriously, thank you for watching. And if this is the last time I see you, well, stay safe, and I hope you have a good one. Goodbye.